Yes. Should be right back. Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining. Hi, Molly. I see you. Molly says, awesome. Thanks for joining a bit earlier than usual. Today is Seeking Sustainability Live, episode number 112. Wow, amazing. Thank you so much for joining, Tsuyoshi.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's awesome to be here.
Now, you are one of many people who, when I first approached about being on the series, you were saying, I don't think I can be up to par with the other speakers, or I don't do anything. But you are so humble because your story is so important and so interesting. And I think you've got so much perspective to offer. So thank you
Thank
so
you so
much for
much.
joining.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about your origin story.
Yeah, sure. So, I'm Japanese. I was actually born in the north in Sapporo. Have you been to Sapporo?
Oh yeah, I love
Oh yeah.
Hokkaido.
Oh man, yeah. And my parents were, they were living there at the time, and I was born in 1988. And but I only lived there for I think it was a couple of months, and then we moved to Wakayama, and we moved around on the Kansai region for until I was 4 years old. Um, and then my father was placed overseas, so our entire family moved to Taiwan, Taipei, Taiwan, and we were there for about 2 years. And that's when I first started learning English at an American kindergarten there. And I remember like, going to school and just not knowing what the teacher was saying, what all the kids were saying. Like I felt like alone. Like I remember an incident that my a story that my mom shared with me where we were playing a game of tag, where you're supposed to, tag the kid and then, that kid was supposed to chase everybody else. But I thought I was being chased. I thought I was being like, teased by all the other kids. So I would go home crying and I would tell my mom, Mom, like all these kids, they keep on just pushing me and then, they run away. Like I don't know what's going on. It was so sad. So sad. It was only later on that I learned that it was just, the game of tag. But yeah, and after Taiwan, our family then moved to Hong Kong, and we were there for 8 years, and I attended a Canadian international school there. I had a wonderful experience in Hong Kong. I don't know if you've been, but it's such a global, cosmopolitan city. And yeah, our family really had a wonderful time. It's probably one of my favorite cities in the world. It's unfortunate what's going on these days over there, but I do still keep in touch with my friends just to check up on what's happening. And after we spent 8 years in Hong Kong, our family moved back to Kobe, Japan, just for a year, where I attended the Canadian Academy, a wonderful school. And after that, we moved to Seoul, South Korea, where I attended the Seoul Foreign School, which is an American school. So I graduated from high school in South Korea, and I went to college in Los Angeles. I went to a small liberal arts school called Occidental College. Have you heard of it?
Well, I went to Pitzer College, which
Oh,
is
Pitzer, no
the
way.
Claremont colleges.
The
So
Claremont
yeah, I
colleges.
know Occidental.
Awesome, awesome. No way. During our freshman year, we used to actually go to your parties at Pitzer. So
We had good parties. Yeah, what
you
do you
guys
say?
did have great parties. Yeah. Oh, awesome. So yeah, I graduated with a degree in economics and international relations. And whoa, what a culture shock. Especially being at a liberal school in LA, California. I remember like I think it was on Friday nights or Saturday nights, our RAs, our resident advisors, they would go around the dorms and hand out candies and condoms. They're like candies and condoms to sweeten up your night, and I was like, whoa, like what's going on? So
Wow.
yeah, but at the same time, I think it was good for me because my family was fairly traditional, And also, I went to the international school that I went to in South Korea was a Christian school, and so it was a huge culture shock, kind of going from a Christian school in South Korea to a super liberal school in Los Angeles. But in a way, like, really showed me, introduced me to really different perspective, different ways of seeing things, and I met a lot of people that I probably wouldn't have met anywhere else in the world. So, looking back at it now, I think those were really my foundational years. So, I'm very, very, yeah, grateful for those 4 years spent at Oxy.
That's
Um,
awesome.
yeah,
I've
yeah.
I've got this great quote from your interview with Global Insights. You
Mm,
say, "I don't want another person to leave school at a young age because of her gender or socioeconomic situation. Like my
mm,
grandmother, I'm dedicating
mm,
my life to education, so there won't be another child like that in the world." So,
mm.
do you think that's how you kind of found your path into education from your grandmother's influence?
Well, my grandmother was definitely a huge influence on me, but I would say that it was probably not until I moved to Honduras and worked for a nonprofit there for 2.5 years that I truly discovered that education was my passion. To be honest, like growing up, I wasn't the best student at school. Like I got average B's with an occasional C, not an occasional A. Like my best class was always PE, physical education, you know? And my father worked for a Japanese education company because he worked for this education company, which was a cram school. I was forced to do Kumon from a very very young age. So my perception of education was something that one was forced to do. You know, it wasn't something that one did voluntarily, and it was only until I went to the States where, for the first time in my life, the professors were like, Yoshi, like, you can pick the class that you wanna learn about. And I was like, whoa, I really get the liberty to pick any class that I want to take. This is awesome. And it was really the first time in my life where I thought, whoa, education could actually be something that is fun. So yeah, it was only until my later years that I discovered this awesome thing that was education.
Yeah, I was really sad to read that despite all your amazing background and all your amazing experiences, when you came back looking for a job in Japan, you couldn't find one.
Oh my God, yeah.
What the heck, right?
I know. Like, I mean, to be honest, like those couple of months were probably one of the toughest months of my life. Because after graduating from after getting my master's in Boston, I went down to Honduras. I'm sorry, I went down to Brazil actually, because I went to the graduate school of education, right? But I was one of the few guys that had no teaching experience. And so I really felt that I was losing out. So I wanted to really gain that teaching experience. So through this organization called World Teach, went down to Brazil, went to a small fishing village in the near the town of Paranaguá. It was a town of probably 2,000, 3,000 people, and did a homestay with a local family, learned Portuguese, and I taught English there for about 2 months. And after that, I joined a small education technology startup in Sao Paulo, worked there for another 3, 4 months. And after that, they weren't able to give me a full-time job offer. They weren't able to give me a visa. So then I came back to Japan defeated. And then when I thought that, with my bilingual school skills, with my education and everything, all my international experience, I thought I'll be able to get a job like that. But no, like I kept on getting rejections left and right. And I remember, there was a time when I was, calling my parents and yeah, like I really had tears in my eyes and I was like, I'm so sorry, guys. Like, you guys did so much for me. You sponsored my education. You believed in me. You always supported me. And like for everything you've done, I haven't been able to do anything, like, and yeah, those couple of weeks were really, really, really tough. But thankfully, I did get one offer from PwC as a sustainability consultant. So I did pick up that job and I worked there for about 10 months. Um, yeah.
You also worked as an analyst and an intern at the United Nations and a bank, JP Morgan, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So, in college, just like all other kids, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. So I dabbled in microfinance. I dabbled in did this public health research on HIV/AIDS in India. So try to do a lot of little things here and there. Um, and I think it was my junior year of college. Um, one of my one of my good friends, her parents worked at an NPO in Myanmar in Southeast Asia, and they told me, Yoshi, like, I know, you want to do something for the world, like I can tell, but you can have you might have a good heart, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you can create change in this world. And they said what we really need are not just people with good intentions, but people with good intentions with a tangible business skill set. And I was like, oh, interesting. Like I always thought that I was just gonna join like a nonprofit or an NGO straight out of college. But looks like what they really need are people with business skills. So then that's the reason why I ended up joining JP Morgan right after college because I thought that with financial skill sets, I would be able to apply them anywhere, right? So yeah.
I mean, that's amazing. You've got such a diverse background in
Mm,
terms of your career training, but also
mm,
you've lived in so many different countries and
mm,
experienced so many different cultures firsthand and languages. How many
mm.
languages do you know now? Three, four?
So, I actually tell people that I know maybe in total, maybe maybe two and a half or possibly three. And the reason is because I yes, my mother tongue is actually Japanese because I grew up speaking in Japanese with my family and with my mom. But I was schooled in English my whole life because from kindergarten all the way up to the end of high school, right? I attended international schools. So my best language is actually English. And when I went to Honduras, I did a homestay for about half a year where I picked up Spanish. And when I went to Brazil, I was also able to learn Portuguese. And because they're both, I mean, Spanish and Portuguese are both Latin-based languages, it was fairly easy for me to also pick up Portuguese. So that's why, but I don't know any of them like enough where I can put them on my resume or say I speak it with confidence. So therefore, I say, two and a half or maybe three. Yeah.
That's so humble. And you often, like, I often come across people who on their resume they say they're fluent in Japanese. And when I
Mm,
meet them,
mm.
I was like, "Oh, wow." And then you hear them talking, you're like, "Really? Fluent?" You know? So I think you're just being a bit humble that if you can communicate, you should definitely put it on your resume. I think
Oh,
so.
we'll see. Wait until you get to hear me speak on Spanish or Portuguese. Like, oh
Well,
man.
I don't know any, so you would
Okay,
you would be a
okay.
step above me. Let's
Gotcha.
let's talk a little bit about your experience in Honduras because it
Yeah.
led to a crowdfunding
Yes.
campaign, right?
Yes, exactly. So, after spending 2 years working at JP Morgan, I felt, very disillusioned. Um, I wasn't satisfied with the nature of my work. I thought it was very repetitive and just um, yeah, I wasn't happy waking up every day going to work and like Steve Jobs says, if you wake up in the morning, look at yourself in the mirror, and if you're not satisfied for several consecutive days, then you gotta change something about your life. well, in my case, I waited 2 full years before I made that change. But, yeah, when I quit, it was very liberating, and it was a huge career risk as well because I was going from finance, which is a fairly, respected field, into coffee, into nonprofit work in the field of coffee, which I knew nothing about, right? So I bought a one-way ticket to go to Honduras, to this small town called La Union, where one of my good friends from college and his group of friends, all from the University of Michigan, had started this microfinance organization. Um, so yeah, that's what brought me to Honduras, and I was there in total for about 2.5 years. The name of the organization is Aldea Development, and I was the director of the Green Coffee Program. So a lot of our and so the organization was a microfinance organization. So the concept of microfinance involves, lending out small amounts of money to the poor so then they can start their own businesses. But in our case, we lent out small amounts of money so that farmers would then use that money to buy fertilizers to apply on their fields to grow quality coffee, but it's in Honduras, or what usually happened was that there were these middlemen called coyotes who would then, you know, buy coffee from farmers at a really depressed price so that farmers wouldn't be able to escape this cycle of poverty. So we said, okay, wait, let's intervene here and let's figure out a way where we could, create these direct trade relationships between coffee roasters, coffee shops in the US so that these farmers will be paid a much fair price for their goods. So my job involved going back and forth between Honduras and the US, building these direct trade coffee relationships so that, a large chunk of the profits would actually go back to our farmers instead of being taken by these middlemen.
That's so important. And we've seen around the world how microfinance can pull people up from poverty, give them more power to run their business like they want. The
Mm,
margins are so small for things like coffee.
exactly.
I think people don't
Exactly.
realize the
Mm,
farmers actually don't make much money. And
no,
often the big companies, are making loads of money. Um,
exactly.
and
Yeah.
I've heard this from organic farmers and small farmers in Japan that
Mm.
there is similar happening with the big agriculture companies in Japan
Oh, no
who
way.
buy the vegetables quite a reduced price. So if you
Wow.
can buy directly from local
Right.
farmers, you're helping them so much.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
That's
Wow.
awesome. And then while you were there, you had the idea for El Libro. Do you want to
Yeah.
explain about that?
Yeah. So, when I first moved to Honduras, I couldn't speak a word of Spanish. And so my boss at the time, he was like, Yoshi, I really think you should do a homestay. That's probably the quickest, most efficient way for you to learn Spanish, to pick up the local language. So I agreed and lived with the Ponces. And I was with their family for a total of 7 months. And I lived in their basement underneath their toilet. And oh man, like at night, sometimes when I turned on the lights, there'll be like cockroaches everywhere on the walls. Yeah, yeah. So it was definitely another moment of culture shock for me, moving from a place like Japan to a place like Honduras. But it was wonderful. Like we lived out in the mountains. The air was so crisp and fresh. Never got like humid like Japan. And I learned how to ride a motorcycle illegally. And so I had a wonderful time there. But anyways, so during my homestay, I noticed that my homestay sister, Tanya, I noticed that she would read the same books over and over again. And I would ask her, "Hey, Tanya, is this your favorite book? Like, is that why you keep on reading it?" And then she told me that she actually only had, these four books in total. And that was a huge, shock to me because I grew up in a family that really valued literature, and we had tons of books growing up. And so it was a shock to me that to live with this family that only had four books at home, um, due to a lack of resources. And but Tanya was a really brilliant student. I think at the time she was second in her entire class. And I thought that it was just really unfortunate that her potential was being stunted due to this lack of resources and due to lack of opportunity. But at the same time, when you're a nonprofit worker, or a community worker, you're in this position where um, you don't want to, you know, what do you call it? Like, um, you don't want to sort of prioritize, or you don't want to put any favoritism towards one family over another. Like, you have to treat everyone equally, right? To prevent any conflicts from occurring. So then I thought, hmm, like, what is something that I can do to, like, raise the tide, right? To help all boats. And the idea that came to my mind at the time was to start a community library, that was open to the public. That way, all kids, not just Tanya, but Tanya and all of her friends, would be able to have this access to educational resources. And so, through the help of the entire community and through the help of my friends from the US, Japan, and everywhere else around the world, we were able to raise, enough money to start this small community library. And it was through that experience where I discovered my love and passion for education.
That's awesome. Are you still doing the fundraiser?
Actually, the fundraiser ended, like, yeah, way back.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, like, yeah, I mean, these days I don't know who is in charge of it. I know that the Facebook page is still up and running, but unfortunately, I've lost touch with the people who are running it. So
Well,
don't know what's
hopefully
happening.
you've got it started and then put it in local hands. So, I
Exactly.
mean, that's the way to go as a social
Right.
entrepreneur. That's the
Right.
the aim of many social entrepreneurs is to start something, get it going, start the momentum, and then pass it on to locals, right? And then
Exactly, exactly. You have to make sure that you take yourself away from the equation, because it doesn't make sense if you are always part of it. It can't be dependent on you. Like, at the end of the day, it has to be self-sustainable. It has to be run by the community themselves, so they take ownership of it, right?
yeah,
So yeah,
definitely.
yeah, that's exactly right.
I just want to shout out to Mehan from Periscope. Thanks for joining. And Mary, she said she's thought the same. Lol, what a pleasure listening to him. So she's enjoying your talk about
Cool,
finding your career, finding
cool,
your place in as you
awesome,
go. Yeah, awesome.
awesome. Thank you.
Before we start talking about teaching coding to kids, which I'm really excited to talk about, you're
Mm.
also active with One Young World. Can you tell us about
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, sure. So, One Young World is a global youth summit that is held at a global city every year, and it's been in existence since 2010. Um, and this year, we're actually doing a caucus, in October, at the end of October, actually. So the whole team is actually pretty busy. This Saturday, we're actually going to the site in Odaiba, to make sure that things are all in place and to do the dry run. Um, but I'm currently serving as a CA, or a coordinating ambassador, and I'm in charge of the Asia 2 region. So that includes Mongolia, Taiwan, China, North Korea, South Korea, and Japan. And so I'm in charge of making sure that all of our ambassadors are around all these countries are, they're being featured for their work, that all the information from the headquarters is properly getting communicated, and nominating ambassadors of the month, and doing monthly, talk events or live shows. So yeah.
That's awesome. So it's a focus on entrepreneurship and developing innovation, is it?
Yeah, well, it's essentially sort of like an opportunity where it's a podium where young leaders, so those who are under like the age of 30, 35, or yeah, 35, could sort of, you know, step up on the podium and also share with the rest of the world about their unique projects and their startups and their ideas. So yeah, essentially it's a podium for young leaders. Is
Hmm.
the simplest way for me to put it.
So if anybody's interested, is it too late to sign up this year?
So for the caucus, we actually just opened registrations. So if you guys go to, I believe it is sdgcaucus.com,
Hmm.
that should take you to the website. Um, but there's a annual summit that is happening next year in Munich, Germany, um, at the end of April. So, and for that, I don't believe that the application is open yet. But yeah, I can share the site later on, or you can help me share the site. And we are always looking for talented leaders from Japan to apply, who we can go with together to Munich and sort of collaborate and also network with young leaders from around the world as well. So
That's
I'm
great.
really excited on it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we talked about this a little bit with Tova
Oh, Tova. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Tova.
Kinoka, because she was in the
Yukinoka.
series and she's
Yes.
she's on the team as well, I believe.
Yes, she is. She's a
Yeah,
director at One Young World as
awesome.
well. Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, sounds really exciting. So anybody who's post high school and under 35, is it?
I believe it's under 35.
Hmm.
Young leaders, quote
Young
unquote.
leaders,
Yes.
yeah. Not just young at heart, but actually physically young. Yeah.
Exactly.
All right.
Exactly.
Let's talk about SK Saturday Kids. Tell us about it.
Yeah, right. So I'm currently serving as the country manager of Saturday Kids. And so Saturday Kids is a curiosity school. It's a coding school for young kids ages 5 all the way up to 14. And we offer classes in programming, robotics. And in Japan, we also offer language lessons as well. So we teach kids how to code through English. And this is obviously a program that's aimed at Japanese kids or kids who don't speak English at home. Um, and it was started by the founder's name is John Tan, and he started it in Singapore in 2012. So it's a Singaporean company originally. And when his first son, Camper, was born, I believe that at the time there were no programming schools or coding schools around him. And he was like, I want to figure out a way where I can teach my son how to code because it's the future and because it's important for him. And because he couldn't find any schools at the time, he just decided to start his own. So that's kind of like the origin story of Saturday Kids. But with that said, what I believe that what sort of differentiates us is that for us, we are really not about, churning out or the next like Mark Zuckerbergs or the Bill Gates. Like we're not trying to train superstar programmers. Like that's not what we care about at all. What our mission and our vision is to really cultivate self-directed learners, who are curious, inventive and resilient. These kids who are able to sort of um, find this natural or an organic love for learning, because that way I feel like they will be able to self-educate themselves for the rest of their lives, and so programming is just a tool for us. It's just we believe that it's the best way to get kids to think, creatively, logically, analytically. But the end goal is to not to make them superstar programmers. Like that's not what we want at all. But if a kid, comes out of our class saying, "Hey, teacher Yoshi, that was fun. Like I enjoyed learning today," then we're like, "Yes, like we did our jobs today."
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Mary made a comment. You're giving chance, so you're
Mm,
giving chances for coding in the future, or you're giving that kind of underlying knowledge that they
yep.
might apply to a wide variety of things, right?
Exactly, exactly. And I mean, if a kid or if a parent, tries out one of our classes and decides, I don't think that coding is for my son, that's totally fine. That's totally fine. Every child has his or her own unique talents and gifts. And if a child or a parent decides that coding is not it, then that's totally fine. That's cool. Like we would encourage them to try out other things so that they could fulfill their own potential in another way. So
Yeah, and you said you studied education. You have a higher degree in education. Where does your coding background come from? Do you have a coding background or?
yeah, so to be completely honest with you, in college I only took two classes um, that was more technical. So then for me, in a lot of ways, my coding is or my background in coding is self-taught. So I took a lot of online classes using Coursera, Khan Academy, and yeah, just read a lot of articles and books and just taught myself. But with that said, I definitely not at a level where I can create an application or create like a website. I'm not there yet. I know enough to teach young kids, um, but I do would want to bring myself up to a level where I can develop an application one day. But I still definitely need probably years of training to get there. So I'm actually learning just like how the kids are.
Sometimes that's a great way, right? To make it easier for learners, new learners to understand because you are learning it yourself,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly, exactly. So I understand their pains and frustrations as well, because I'm going through that same process. Yeah.
That's great. Why do you think coding or robotics is important for kids?
So, with coding, especially with coding, I feel like there's a lot of ways in which, your experience of, you know, of programming something could also be applied to life in general. So, for example, when you are trying to code a game in Scratch, or when you're trying to code an application, you encounter these what is called bugs or these obstacles or walls in life. And you have to figure out a way where you can sort of climb over these walls. You have to figure out a way where you can sort of walk around it. And it's only through multiple attempts. It's only through trying and figuring out where you got your code wrong, fixing it, trying it again, running your code again and again and again. And I feel like with life, that's how life works as well, where you might have a setback, you might have failures, you might face obstacles, and you really have to take a step back and figure out like what did I do wrong? What did I do here that was wrong? Like how can I improve myself? How can I make sure that I don't encounter the same mistakes again in my life? And so in that light, I think that, you know, coding is a really good sort of practice that teaches lifelong lessons to our young kids.
I know when my son took a coding class just over a weekend one time, and he said, it's really frustrating because often you get something wrong, but
Mm.
then you realize the computer is not emotional.
Yeah,
That
exactly.
if you get the right combination, it'll work. It
Yeah,
doesn't it doesn't
exactly.
matter on the mood of the computer or the
Yeah.
mood of the code. There is no mood. So
Yeah.
that kind of gave him confidence to just keep
Oh,
trying,
cool.
you know?
Oh, awesome. Awesome. Yeah, it's a battle against yourself, actually. Yeah. So, oh, that's very cool. So
Yeah.
your son is also doing it.
He did a while ago, but
Nice.
I think this would be really good for my daughter,
Mm.
because she loves like mysteries. She's a big
Mm.
Sherlock Holmes fan, you know,
Nice.
and she loves figuring things out. So I would love
Mm.
to get her into coding as well. It looks like
Yeah.
the classes you guys offer are really fun.
Yeah. 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 So we really try to teach through fun and through games. Uh, we really believe in the whole concept or methodology of play-based learning. I don't know if this comes from like I guess my experiences having gone to cram schools my whole life, but I really think that education should be, or learning should be something that is fun. It really should be an enjoyable process, especially for the young kids. Um, and so, yeah, when we hire people, we also look for big kids, you know? And I consider myself like a big kid as well, so that you can talk with kids at their level, right? And also experience the world like how they are seeing the world. And yeah, like, you can create games with them, you can create unique storylines, um, just allow it to sort of replicate what goes on in their mind onto a screen. If you're able to do that successfully, then oh, that would be wonderful.
That's awesome. Molly B here says coding did make me more focused and determined to succeed at other things. That's awesome,
Mm,
Molly. And
that's
Mary
definitely
Mary
nice.
says right on, JJ. Thanks, Mary.
Mm.
For supporting my kids to code, maybe.
Nice.
So let's talk about one of the classes, for example. I'm
Sure, sure.
showing on screen right now, from zeros to Python heroes back to
Mm,
basics. So
mm.
can you walk us through what kind of things parents and kids need to think about or prepare before they start a course?
Yeah, so with a lot of our classes, there we do have prerequisites, and for the Python class, they will have to have knowledge in Scratch. So Scratch is a block-based programming language that is developed by MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and it's very visual. So for those of you who have never heard of Scratch or never used Scratch, you're essentially just dragging along building blocks, and you're combining them, and then your character moves accordingly to the building blocks that you have put together. So if it's up, down, up, up, then your character would move up, down, and then up, up again. And so even for kids as young as 6 or 7, they can easily sort of pick it up. And so we use Scratch as like our foundational course, our entry level course for all of our kids. And Python will be a class that will be for mainly for kids that are in middle school um, and above, and it's text-based programming. So you're no longer using building blocks. It's all text-based code. So you're actually typing on a computer. You wouldn't be able to do this on like your cell phone or on a Padlet. You will have to have access to a physical computer or a laptop. And and yeah, I've only taught it once, but then it's a fairly technical and challenging class. But kids do come up with their own calculators using it, um, and it's yeah, you'd be impressed by the kind of stuff that kids are able to come up with.
And during coronavirus, it's been kind of an easy transition for you guys because a lot of what you do is already online, is it?
Yes, so actually, thanks to COVID-19, we've transitioned a lot of our classes online. So before COVID-19, actually, a lot of our class or all of our classes were taught in person because, as Saturday kids, we believe in in-person sort of like building that human relationship with the child is really important. But thanks to COVID, because we weren't able to sort of see our kids in person, we transitioned a lot of our classes online. And of course, that means the student to teacher ratio is a lot lower. So instead of our standard ratio of 1 teacher to 6, I believe now it's 1 to 4, sometimes even as low as 1 to 3, so that the teacher can make sure that he or she looks at the screen and sees that the kids are following around and making sure that they're on track. But but yeah, I feel like we've still been able to maintain our unique pedagogy in the way in which we're teaching kids how to code, although now the format is being done online.
And most of the courses seem to last about 10 weeks. Is that right?
Yeah, on average, they last about 10 weeks, and it's done 1 week. The courses are held once a week for about 10 weeks, so about 2 months and a half, and you're done with a full set of classes.
And so, how do you do that? Do you do rolling intake, or do you have a set start date and then the same group ends after 10 weeks? Or do you kind of take kids anytime, or how does that work?
Yeah, so we've tried different approaches in the past where we've announced like a start date or we've announced a period of classes and then parents would sign up. Or, if there is a group of parents and a group of kids who are friends with each other, then they would come to us as a group and we can hold private lessons for them according to time slots that work for them as well. So that's another great thing about being like a startup and being very flexible, right? Having a small team, you can be very flexible with these things. So we can really accommodate to the needs of our parents and our customers.
That's awesome. And about how much do these courses cost?
Yeah, so for the 10-week course that you had just talked about, there are 45,000 yen, so 45,000 yen in total. But that's 15 hours of instruction time. Um, and for the courses for younger kids, I believe it's slightly less. Um,
And if people want more information, there's a Facebook page, and you guys are on Instagram as well as the website, right?
exactly, exactly. We are on Facebook, we are on Instagram, and our website is SaturdayKids.jp. So you'll be able to find all the information up there on our website.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And
Yeah.
it sounds really interesting and so necessary.
Mm,
I've talked about this with Hiko Simon
mm,
when we were talking about the news and
mm.
how digitalization is a big thing in Japan now, right?
Yes.
Like for years, and you know this from working in finance, for years everything is paper based, and you have to
Right.
have an inkan,
Oh,
wooden
yeah.
stamp and everything. But
Yeah.
now there's a really big push towards digitalization, so
Exactly.
it's
Yeah,
necessary, right?
can you believe it? Like when I was working at the investment bank, and this was back in 2010, 2011, we were still faxing documents to clients. And I was like, are you guys serious? Like, why are we using these fax machines, you know? Yeah, it was pretty ridiculous. But yeah, even back then, I knew that Japan was way behind and we needed this. So I'm finally glad that the Suga administration is implementing these changes now,
Yeah.
2020.
And that's great that you're offering it as like an extra course, kind of like Juku style, but for coding after school or something, right?
Yes,
But
yes.
shouldn't coding and programming be part of school curriculum, right?
Yeah, yeah. So actually for in Japanese public schools, actually starting from this year in 2020, at all primary school levels, they're going to integrate computational thinking into the school curriculum. So it's not like they're going to have like a computer or a coding programming class where there's one teacher that dedicates 60 minutes of instruction time to coding. It's not like that, but they're going to integrate coding into science or disciplines like math, into the sciences, into like physics and whatnot. So the kids are going to be able to experience how they can apply coding to these fields. So actually, I think that is probably the better way to do it, because if you're just sort of like coding as a sort of like a separate field at school, then just like all the other classes, you kind of never know what you're using this for, right? So it gets kids really confused. And as you probably know, like Japanese kids are overburdened with classes as they are. So we don't need to put more pressure and more stress on these kids. But if they can see how coding could be used to more efficiently solve this math problem, or more if they're able to use coding to sort of figure out how to visualize this scientific concept, then the kids are like, oh, cool, this is actually something that is relevant to me. This is something that is useful. And it makes it more interesting for the kids.
That's awesome. And I saw that in one of the courses you guys offer, you're showing kids how Instagram works, or how
Mm.
things that they use, like social media that they use, what the programming is behind that. And so you're kind of
Mm.
like uncovering a mystery that something they use and they can see. I think that's a great idea.
Right. Right, right, definitely. Because at the end of the day, we don't want our kids to become passive consumers of technology. We want them to become active creators with technology. And, you go to just an average playground here in Japan, you see a bunch of kids at a playground, but they all have their, Nintendo DSs, and they're just in a little circle and they're just playing their little games. It's cute, but then they're just being passive consumers, and we want to really flip that around and say, hey guys, like, if you want to just play games, why don't you create your game? And why don't you share that game with your friends? And why don't you then look into the code and improve on that game? Right? That's a much more productive use of your time. Yeah.
Definitely. Molly says coding starts here in second grade in Pittsburgh public schools. No way, Molly. That's awesome. I think, the image of Japan is so high tech and in the future and everything's
Yeah.
digital.
Yeah.
But
Exactly.
actually, like
Exactly.
IT education and coding, programming, robotics is actually, it's very niche in Japan, like
It's very niche.
very small group of people actually pursuing it. So if
Exactly.
Japan could do more coding and programming in schools, it has so many applications into different industries,
Mm.
right? It'd
No,
be
oh,
great
you're
asset.
completely right. Yeah, you're completely right. I think on average, our IT literacy rate is embarrassingly quite low. You'd be surprised by the number of managers here in Japanese companies that don't really know how to use Excel or PowerPoint. Because they never had to, because they would order their bukas, or the people who work under them, to do everything. Um, and so yeah. I really think that there is a huge opportunity where Japan can really step up its game, and make sure that, the next generation of Japanese youth can be more IT literate, but also IT literate in a way that is more productive.
Yeah, for sure. Mary says, wow, so fascinating for them, I'm sure. And I think it's true. It's like when we talk about bilingual education, we've had a few teachers talk in the series about she's monolingual, she's raising her kids bilingual, trilingual, just
Okay.
just working at it. Tiara
Mm,
Harris, she's a
mm,
great educator. And then Adam Beck, also
mm,
encouraging families to be bilingual, trilingual. And
mm,
quite often, what they're told by Japanese people is, "Oh, but they don't know their mother tongue yet. They can't. They
mm,
can't take it in. Let's learn mother tongue first, and
mm,
then we'll build with another language." But
mm,
I think this is the same kind of concept for coding, right?
mm,
For
mm, mm.
kids, they can use more of their brain
Mm.
than we can, right? So
Right,
you
right.
just start with fun activities which are talking about coding, and you take away that scary factor
Yeah,
of the
exactly.
unknown, and then they can
Exactly.
choose to go into it or not, right?
Exactly, exactly. No, you're so right there. And also, you'd be surprised by how malleable and how creative younger kids are. You sometimes expect to see the middle schoolers or the high schoolers doing better with their robotics assignments or coding assignments, but actually we found that the younger kids are a lot better, they're a lot more creative. Like, they haven't been trained to think in a certain pattern or a certain way, so they can think outside of the box, and they'll come up with solutions that really surprise us, the educators. And we'll be like, wow, like you really thought of that, or you really did that. And yeah, it's quite amazing how younger kids, especially those who are in their, 6, 7, 8, 9, can really, not listen to our instructors, and come up with their own unique projects.
Wow,
Yeah, it's
that's
really
great.
cool.
I wonder if it's like learning music or learning
Mm,
something creative, right? Like they often say, if you expose your kids to a lot of different skills when they're kids, try different instruments, listen
mm,
to different music, That every person is so different in the kind of information they prefer to take in, right?
Right, right, right.
And so why not just loads of diverse influence to kids,
Mm,
and then
mm,
see what
mm.
happens. And like you said, really young kids, really creative when they
Yes.
have those inputs, right?
Oh, for sure, for sure.
That's
That's right.
awesome. Any challenges for you when teaching coding to kids? You said you're learning it yourself. Anything
Mm.
else? How do you motivate kids? How do you keep them
Um,
curious?
that's a really good question. So at Saturday Kids, I believe that we have a really unique way of teaching our kids. Um, we we embrace this sort of pedagogy or this way of teaching that is structured in three unique steps. The first is guided learning. So this is fairly similar to traditional teaching, where an instructor stands in front of the classroom and explains concepts and theories to kids. And there's the unguided portion where you set a goal or an objective, but then you don't tell kids how to get there. You allow the kids to use their brains and think creatively and figure out their own paths to get there. Um, and then there is the sandbox portion at the towards the end of the class, where then we just allow the kids to go out there and have fun and play. You know, we give them an opportunity where they could apply the concepts that they have just learned in their own unique and creative way. And I feel like, this three-step process really cultivates or allows kids to sort of take ownership of this process. And it's not a top-down, like me telling you to do something. It's really bottom up, and kids feel like they're just playing in the playground. It's not something that an adult is forcing them to do. It's something that they're just enjoying with a group of their friends. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah.
Molly says children are knowledge sponges. They
Yeah, yeah,
certainly
yeah.
are. And
Oh,
what you're
definitely.
talking about is what I learned in EFL teacher training, right? It's
Mm,
not the traditional teaching style of I'm
mm.
the teacher, I know everything, I'm
Right,
teaching you knowledge, take it in.
right, right,
It's
right,
more
right,
like here's a question, what do you
right.
think? Or
Yeah,
asking a question, you know the answer, but you hold
right.
back the answer,
Exactly,
wait
exactly.
for it. And it's
Yeah.
funny when I've done like teaching lessons which were open to parents, and then
Mm,
you'll do that style and you're giving kids time to think of the answer, and sometimes
mm,
the parents are at the back going, I
mm,
know. I mean,
mm.
it's magic because it really makes people want to find out
Yeah, yeah.
instead of just telling them information all the time,
Right,
right?
right, right. You're taking that opportunity away from the kids if you keep on providing them with the answers. Yeah, I have to say, to be quite honest, our best teachers are ironically not the ones that teach our kids the most, but it's actually the ones that learn the most from our kids.
Yeah.
Those are the best teachers that we have. Yeah.
Absolutely. Open-ended questions are so key to
Yeah.
engaging with kids for
Mm,
sure. And
mm,
even adults, to be honest.
yes. Yeah.
Even raising my own kids, I would sometimes use the same strategy. I mean, they would often watch Blue's Clues. Have you ever seen
Yeah,
that
yeah,
show,
yeah.
right?
I know
And
Blue's
then
Clues.
in
Yeah.
Blue's Clues, they do that strategy, right? He's like,
Mm,
"Oh, I wonder," and then a long
right,
pause. And then the
right,
kids
right.
would have a chance to think, not just telling
Yes,
them the information. So sometimes
yes.
I do that with my kids, and my husband would answer, and I'd be like, "No, I know the answer."
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm not
Oh,
really asking.
exactly. It was a rhetorical question.
Yeah. Mary
Uh,
says, if the parents were more involved, I feel this is a huge setback for kids.
that's
A-
right.
And
Yeah.
parents don't like change, she feels. That's true.
That's
So
right. Yeah.
I think
No, I
that
think.
certain generation may be more comfortable with
Mm,
the teacher led type of
yes.
class, right?
Yes, definitely, definitely. And yeah, when we have these sort of workshops where we invite parents in, it's very difficult because the parents get overly involved. and they're actually the ones that's doing the coding and working on the robotics, and we gotta like pull them out and be like, hey guys, like step back, like let's give an opportunity for your kids to do stuff. So yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's funny.
It's funny. I bought an iPhone a couple years ago, and
Hmm.
they offer free coding classes for kids in
Mm,
the Apple Store
I
in
see.
in Fukuoka, and that was really fun.
I see.
So to encourage my daughter to go, while I was doing something, my husband joined her,
Mm,
and she actually did much better than my husband. So
mm.
I think when we're adults, are like you said, little kids, they can kind of accept
Yep.
the openness of the
Right.
coding exercise, whereas adults were like, I should know this. What is the
Mm,
answer? And a bit
mm.
stuck in the way
Right,
that we're
right, right,
thinking.
right. Yes. Oh, yeah, that happens a lot. Um, yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
Awesome. Well, we've got 4 more minutes.
Okay.
Is there anything we haven't talked about that you'd like to touch on? How about your 5 a.m. club, or
My 5
your
a.m. call.
Vipassana? Are you doing yoga?
So okay, let me try to start off with my 5 a.m. club because this is
Yeah.
something recent that I started.
Good for
So
you.
one of my good friends here in Tokyo, his name is Kuni. I have a lot of respect for this guy because he's really a inspiration to me. He works on himself so much. He writes a daily journal, and he was a guy who first started waking up at 5 a.m. and he would post every day on Instagram stories. And I tried multiple times to join him, but I kept on failing. Like I would stop after 3 days, stop after 5 days, stop after 6 days, never made it up to a full week. And I realized that my biggest weakness was that I wasn't accountable to anyone. Um, and so I decided to do what he did, which was to post a story on Instagram every morning after waking up at 5 a.m. And I've been able to do that for 13 consecutive days now. So
Good for
today was
you.
actually my 13th day. And
Nice.
it is thanks to accountability that I've been able to do this. If I didn't do that, then I probably would have given up after day three again. So yeah, that's my 5 a.m. club. And Vipassana. So this is Vipassana is a sort of like a silent meditation retreat that I went to. I believe this was a couple years back, prior to me going to graduate school. But I think there are two centers in Japan. There's one in Kyoto and one in Chiba, but it's all free, so participants don't have to pay. You are sort of encouraged to make a donation at the end of your experience, but it's not mandatory. And it was a life-changing experience for me, because I sat in meditation for 10 days straight without speaking to anyone, without consuming any sorts of media. So I turned off Facebook, turned off Instagram, wasn't even reading the newspaper, just kind of really, really, you know, just in my own little world for 10 consecutive days. And it helped me sort of reset myself. Um, and I came back being able to sort of take a renewed or a fresh perspective on a lot of things in my life. And so I would strongly encourage, participating in one of these Vipassana meditations for any one of your listeners, um, especially during this time, because I know that this year has definitely been a tough year for a lot of people. And so just being able to sort of, you know, reflect back on your life and also think through all the things that, one can be appreciative about. Um, so just simple things like breathing, um, being in someone's presence, like deeply listening to someone's conversation. Um, it's really simple things about that, like that. I think that really changes or improves the quality of one's life, and so yeah, strongly encourage people to do that. So
That's
that's
awesome.
about it.
The
Yeah.
yoga retreats or meditation sessions I've done in the past have been so interesting to me because
Mm.
and so useful and
Yeah.
healthy in terms of
Yeah.
emotional and physical and
Yeah.
mental health, right?
Yeah.
And I love when they say try to clear your mind, and
Mm.
you
Mm.
realize how difficult it is
It
to
is.
think about nothing. It's
Exactly.
so hard, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
But if you can do it, if you can somehow clear your mind, you actually have so many new ideas that come in,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then you try to
Yeah.
clear those too. But it's things that you would never have a chance to think about because your mind is actually too busy all the
Mm.
time, right? So,
That's
what a
that's
great
exactly right.
experience. I have to check that out. That sounds
Oh, you
amazing.
should. You should. Yeah.
Molly says, I've been doing meditative yoga and it has really helped me get through the recent stress. I think so.
Mm. Mm.
Definitely.
I'm
Especially
glad.
during coronavirus.
Yeah.
And especially during the American election right now. Oh my gosh.
Mm. Oh
Talk
my God.
about like the news, turning on the news is
Yeah.
so stressful right now,
Right.
right?
Right.
And then a lot of people are out of work. My
Right.
focus of work has always been tourism industry. There is no
I see.
tourism going on right now.
No.
So
No.
this series has been such a great positive use of my
Awesome.
time.
Oh,
Yeah.
awesome.
But, before that, oh my gosh, so depressed and, what am I
Yeah.
going to do? And
Right. Right.
so
Right.
doing meditation and yoga, I think is really key because it cuts out a lot of the noise, the negative
Right.
noise that you have in your
Definitely.
head, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Also, you say you're a TikTok king. What's that about?
TikTok. So this is also something that came out of the Corona period, right? And my excuse, so I have an excuse, so is that I have to always be able to, or it's important for me to understand or see the world through the lens of a young child. And right now TikTok is really booming among teenagers in the U.S., but also elsewhere. And I thought, what is this TikTok thing? Why is it taking over the world by storm? Like, is it? And so I've actually created two videos, and it took a while to create these videos. Like people put in a lot of effort, but it was actually so fun, like doing it. It was such an awesome way for me to sort of use my pent up creative energies that I don't really get to use sometimes in my regular life or in my profession. Um, and yeah, I mean, there's silly videos up there. I don't know if you would be interested in watching them, but I danced to a scene in Love Actually. I don't know if you know that movie with Hugh Grant. He plays the role of the prime minister, and all of a sudden, when he's sitting by the window and he just starts, like dancing, and then he does his own thing, and it's just a copy of his dance that I put up there. But yeah,
You
it's a really
you you have to share with me your TikTok name. What is it?
okay, okay,
I
okay.
want to find you.
Okay. I believe that it is TY Domo 88.
Okay.
Um, yeah, either T Domoto 88 or TY Domo 88,
Okay.
and it should come up.
Okay, awesome. I will
Yeah.
seek you out. That is something I recommend to people who are doing interesting entrepreneurs or startups. They need to be on TikTok because that's the future. If you want to connect with young audience, you got to do it.
Exactly. People say it's going to be the new Instagram, right? So you
Yeah.
should understand how it works, and you should try to understand the content that is popular there, because that is the culture. That is where the culture is shifting towards. So, yeah.
Yeah, Molly says they've banned blocked TikTok in the US now,
Oh, yeah.
upgrades, because it's part of the resistance, right? They're
Yeah.
resisting against the current administration.
Yeah.
I've named my rescued kittens TikTok. So one is
That's
tick, one
cute.
is talk.
Oh,
Yeah,
really? Oh,
they're
that's so cute.
twins.
Oh, that's funny. Kitchen talk.
But thank you
Nice.
so much for joining the series today and for
Yeah, thank
sharing
you.
all your insights. You're doing such
Thank
great
you.
work with coding. I'm sure you've
Thank you.
got a really interesting career ahead, lots of projects ahead as well. So
Thank
keep
you.
up keep up the good work. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, JJ, for this wonderful opportunity. I hope you and your listeners learned a thing or two about me and about, education technology. And I would love to be back one day in the future.
Awesome. I'd love to have you
Yeah,
back. Thank you
awesome.
so much for listening, everybody. Thank you for your wonderful comments and questions. And it's the weekend. So have a great weekend. Take care of yourself. And we'll catch up again with you next week. Take care, everyone.
Yes.
Thank
Take
you
care,
so
everyone.
much.
Bye.
Bye.